Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the German football podcast on the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn. And joining me, as always, is Manuel. Manu, how have you been?
Yeah, very good, Bryce. How about you?
Yeah, pretty good. It was St. Patrick's Day yesterday after all, so a little bit of celebrating, but nothing too wild.
Oh, that's good. So, did you go and drink green Guinness?
No, I had 1 pint of Guinness, and that was about it. I had a few other beers, but no, it wasn't green. It wasn't green, unfortunately.
It's really
what about you? Do you not celebrate snow?
I'm not Irish.
Lots of people celebrate it anyway, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's cultural appropriation, Bryce. You have to be very careful with these things these days.
Fair enough. Well, let's ask then Chris Williams if he happened to have a drink yesterday on St. Patrick's Day. Did you, Chris?
No, I'm very boring. I rarely drink these days. And you both know what happens if I do drink. Like when we went to Leipzig, I missed the bus and I'm late for things. So, no, and unfortunately, I didn't have anything. And Bryce, what's your response to the North American version, St. Paddy's Day with 2 T's? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, I think they celebrate it more than the Irish actually do. I don't know. We know that they like to often do things over the top, don't they? And
to be fair, more Irish people live in North America than in Ireland.
Well, especially if you include all the ones that say that they're quarter Irish as well, I suppose. But
yeah, especially on St. Paddy's Day.
But anyway, this could get very messy, and let's stick to what we do know, and that's German football. And guys, we didn't have a Monday night game this week, which is why we're able to get the pod out a little earlier, which we're happy about, and seems like I'd imagine the fans are happy about as well. And I suppose let's start by talking about the Friday night game, which seen Stuttgart, who have been in fine form recently, beat Freiburg away from home. 2 goals from Mario Gomez sees them move up the table. And yeah, they're sitting in 8th, which isn't too far off a European spot. Manu, it was a bit of a derby, wasn't it? But Stuttgart came out, well, with all 3 points, and they look good for possibly getting into a Europa League, don't they?
Yeah, first of all, I'm glad we don't have a Monday game. It's just so nice getting this pod out on a Sunday and have a conclusion to what I thought was a very interesting match day. And it started with a very good match on Friday. We've been it's been a bit flat the last couple match days, I'm not gonna lie. And I felt that this match day, when I watched the Friday game, I thought, okay, things could be better this weekend. And I thought this was a very interesting game between 2 teams that really tried to play football. And Stuttgart, with your favorite coach of the league, Bryce, they haven't lost a game under Korkut. It's really remarkable how they have gone from the relegation spots all the way to 8th, and then just 2 points behind Hoffenheim. And remember, 7th is probably going to be enough to reach the Europa League this year, because the 4 semi-finalists, Schalke, Frankfurt, Leverkusen, and Bayern, they're already in the European spots, right? So if one of them wins the cup, the spot will go back to the league, which means 7th will be enough for the Europa League. And they're looking good for that now. And I think 2 key things that Stuttgart did, that was to, even though they weren't really in huge relegation troubles, to part ways with Hannes Wolf, which wasn't an easy decision for them to make. It was a very difficult decision for them to make, because he's a very talented coach, right? And to sign Mario Gomez. And Mario Gomez was the difference maker on Friday night. Yes, the button, it's back. Mario Gomez button. Chris, you discovered it on the internet, didn't you?
Yeah, unfortunately, its bandwidth's been exceeded already. So, yeah, I tweeted out last night, the button's back, and already it's gone.
How come it's gone?
I think we should, because obviously the guy that runs the site, whoever's made it's only got limited bandwidth, and everybody starts pressing the button, don't they, when he scores, and it chews up his bandwidth. I think we should really crowd surf this, or is it crowdfund? That's how down with the kids I am. We should club together and get this guy a full-time server, or we should bring the Mario Gomez button onto the Football Crowd network, Manu.
I'll talk to our techie. I'm sure we can do it. We should contact him and we'll host it over on fußballstadt.com. That shouldn't be an issue at all. It's just a page, right? And a click.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah, I think it needs to be done. I think that's the biggest project you're gonna have this week, Manu.
Yeah, absolutely. But if he keeps going like that, we have to worry about our bandwidth as well.
Yes, indeed. Chris, obviously Manu and I spoke about how Stuttgart could possibly get a European spot, and they're in fine form. Do you believe that they'll be able to creep into the Europa League? They're not far behind Hoffenheim at the moment.
Well, they may be able to. They're playing very well at the moment, and they're managing to pick up points where others are starting to drop them. So I'm sure we're going to get onto Hoffenheim's game this weekend, which was an absolute cracker. But there's 2 points drop there, and Stuttgart have taken full advantage of that. My only fear is I don't know if they're ready to go straight into Europe. I mean, they have got the right backing, and they will have the funds to make purchases in the summer to get them Europa League ready. I just don't know if it's a little too early. Maybe this time next year, I think they could be ready for it. But I would be hesitant to send another promoted side into Europe, albeit it is Stuttgart and they're very strong historically. The team they played this weekend, Freiburg, were promoted and went straight into Europa League and then didn't get through the qualification stages, which then affects all sorts to do with the German national side and to do with the German league. So, yeah, the coefficiency would be harmed, I think, again, if Stuttgart went in. I mean, we spoke last weekend, the top 6 and 7 as it stood last week for me was the strongest side that could go into Europe. Yeah,
no, I mean, Manu, what do you think it is that Korkut has done to the Stuttgart side to make them so impressive of late? I mean, last 5 games they've won 4 of them and drew 1. It is an impressive time for them.
Yeah, he's basics, strong defense, have them, just rely on defensive football first, and then the rest is really just using the strong attacking players that they have out of a very well organized defense. And look, if you don't concede goals, and I don't have the number in my head right now, I'm pretty sure you have it right in front of you, Bryce, but they haven't conceded many. And I think that is really much the foundation of Korkut's football, and it works. And if you have someone like Mario Gomez, and he has a lot of aid, and Ginczek as well, and there's a lot of good attacking players in that side period, then that's a good recipe for success. And this is a side that we always thought when I watched them against Dortmund just before the winter break in Stuttgart, and I thought this is a very good side, and this was a game that they won. So all the fundamental things were already there. It's just that tactically, I think Hannes Wolf had them play a bit too aggressive. And that, when you come in new into the league, that can hurt you a little bit. So he basically shut shop in the back, and then just relying on really the superior players and talent that they have up front.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you mentioned about defensively, they've been very strong. They're joint second when it comes to goals conceded, along with the likes of Schalke, Frankfurt as well. But goals seems to have been an issue, scoring the least amount of goals bar Hamburg this season. They'll definitely need to keep Mario Gomez fit, and hope that he can put away a few for them. They've got Hamburg next, which I'm sure they'll be rather eager for. Chris, if we just look at Freiburg before we move away from the fixture, it's not been a great season for them, has it? I mean, would they have been expecting a bit more than maybe sitting in 14th at the moment? I mean, I don't think there's any risk of them going down or going into that relegation playoff, but it's not been a fantastic year for them, has it?
No, it hasn't, but I think we have to remember who they lost in the closed season. Grifo, Philip, excellent players. I think were key to the style they played last season. And they were a real surprise to everybody when they came up, and maybe they've just found their level. I'm not saying that 14th place is their level, but down or that area would be a little unfair. But you're only staying in the league by where you are, and I think you're quite right, Bryce. They're on 30 points at the moment. There's a 5-point gap to Wolfsburg and Mainz, who are fighting out for that relegation slot in 16th, and there'd have to be some sort of catastrophic failure by Christian Streich and the people down in Freiburg. But if they finish 15th, I'm sure they will be happy because they will retain their Bundesliga status and they can build again next year. But I don't think they adequately replaced the two guys that went out in the summer, who went on and have played very well at the clubs they've gone on to when they've had the chance. Maximilian Philipp played for Dortmund this morning, or it was this afternoon, wasn't it? Early on this afternoon, on Sunday as we record this. And he came on and I thought it was excellent, hit the post, and we'll get onto that game in a minute. But it just shows that that's just who they're missing at the moment. There seems to be something missing at Freiburg, and it's in that area, unfortunately, for them. But if they finish anywhere between 10th and 14th, I think it will be a good season for them. They're one of those clubs we spoke last season that maybe they're in the top 20, top 25 clubs in Germany. So if they do drop down, then it's maybe not the end of the world for them. But where they are currently, I think it's a fair reflection.
Yes, indeed. And I think that more or less does it for the Friday night game. Let's move on to teams that are in form and talk about Eintracht Frankfurt. They move up to 4th on the table. Rather impressive in itself. They managed to beat Mainz 3-0 this weekend. Mainz obviously not in good form, which we'll get to at some point. But Manu, the Eagles are flying high, as some would say.
Yeah, they indeed are flying high. I watched this game and I thought, this is a derby game. So these are, although Frankfurt are a much better side than Mainz, and Mainz is for me one of the favorites actually at the moment to go down in Bundesliga 2. This is still a derby match, right? And anything can happen in a derby match. They're very difficult to play. And Frankfurt got the lead very quick, got the 3 goals, and then they did what a championship side does, or like a very good side does, and they just sat on it. And the second 45 minutes weren't as spectacular as the first, but I thought they managed that game so well. Game management is so important if you want to have success, and it's such a big jump from what we saw from them at points last season, right, where they at this stage of the season really fell apart. And that's not happening at all. And I think Niko Kovac and the entire team and everyone who's involved with this team, they have made a huge jump when it comes to game management and managing the decisions better. Yellow and red cards is still a little bit of an issue, but I think it has improved. Omar Mascarell and Fabian are the only two players struggling with injuries a little bit, but their squad is now so deep that they easily can cope with that. Sebastian Haller hasn't been great scoring, so you know what? They're throwing Luka Jovic and he's doing it instead. And that's for me just a sign that they really managed to develop this side and give it a lot of strength. And I would say squad depth wise, they have almost the strongest of the teams in that top 6 right now. They have a lot of moving parts, a lot of players in every position, and that's something that they did really well during the summer transfer window, that they just brought in strength and numbers to manage that side well. And I mean, another transfer, and Chris, we all thought, what are they doing when they brought in Kevin Prince Boateng? And that is probably now the transfer of the season.
Yeah, it is. I was there for his first game when he came on, and he didn't particularly impress me then. And I did genuinely wonder why they brought him back. But since match day 1, he's gone on. And I remember back to, I think it was the Gladbach game not so long ago, where he was excellent, even putting so much to go, he's putting his body on the line to get injured to get a goal, which is a very brave thing to do. But every time I've seen him play, and that includes when I was over in Wolfsburg for, I think it was match day. Oh, it was a long time ago now anyway. But when we were over there for that particular glut of games, I thought he was excellent. In fact, he was probably the player of the weekend for me that weekend when we were over there for Hertha, Dortmund and Wolfsburg, Frankfurt. I thought they were excellent. In fact, I spoke to the Hey Eintracht Frankfurt pod after that and said that this is something that we've noted, and Manu, you've said it again, about their game management. It's phenomenal. Now, the second half, as you quite rightly said, is a little boring. But if you are able to go 3-0 up and then just shut the shop and then just grind out a 0-0 and manage that game fantastically. Not only does that put you in good stead for the league, it also shows that this is the type of team that could translate that success into Europe for me next season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing for me is that second half, to really be able to grind that result out. That was for me. I thought that just the way they handled that, and Mainz had tried to put in pressure on them because they had so much trouble right now, and to handle that so well, that's just fantastic performance by them.
That's the sort of performance when you're in Europe, you need to win your home games. Especially if they go to the Europa League and they start playing, and they get out of that into knockout stages and they start playing two-legged football. That was an example of two-legged football in 90 minutes. A fantastic start. You'd say that's your home game, go and win 3-0, and then to go abroad and just sit on that and grind out a 0-0. It might not be, the most exciting, but it's certainly the most effective. And you're quite right. You highlighted Jovic there. He was brilliant. Every time I've seen him play live in the flesh, he's came on and scored. And I really, really am excited by his play. I think he's fantastic. And when he's partnering Rebic up front, I think he's really good. But it's that midfield four that they seem to be playing at the moment. Kovac is sort of not stumbled upon a system, because that would be unkind to him, but the holding midfielder, the six that he plays, no matter who plays in that area, that's key to that as well. Looking after the back three and supplying the back four, and then if they've got the ability, feeding it direct into the front two, which we've seen a number of times this season. And I would say Frankfurt have not only been the surprise of the season, but come May, if we're going to be handing out awards for team of the season, last season I give to Freiburg, it's going to take some stopping to Eintracht Frankfurt to get my team of the season.
Yeah, I would go along with that. And maybe just a final anecdote. Freddie Bobic went and said to the media that when he suggested that they should sign Kevin Prince Boateng in the summer, the Eintracht Frankfurt board was thinking that he was joking at first. And I think he's the one laughing now.
Yeah, well, I think, as you said, Manu, the second half of last season, they could barely pick up a point. They couldn't, win games at all. They were truly shocking, and it seemed like they had a heavy reliance on Marco Fabian, and needed him to come back into the team to have any type of firepower. But this season has been completely different, and it's a good thing to see, isn't it? We like more competition in the Bundesliga, but Manu, you've wrote an article, haven't you, recently, saying whether it would actually be a benefit for Eintracht to get into the Champions League. That sounds like an obvious thing to say, but we've all discussed before that sometimes these jumps can be a step too far. But you think that it's going to be a healthy thing for them?
It's the money, Bryce. I did the number crunching last night after the game, because it is a fair debate, right? The problem is with the Europa League, yes, as a competition, they would probably fit in there a little bit better. The problem is what we've seen in the past is that teams that reach the Europa League they don't get the financial windfall to keep their teams together and to add to their teams. Now, the math is quite simple. Worst case scenario. And this is the absolute worst case scenario. And I'm basing this on the 2016-17 numbers, because the numbers for this season are not out yet, right? But, if you lose all your games in the group stage of the Champions League, you still walk away with 30 million, euros. Now, when you win the Europa League, that means going all the way to the final. And this is based on, the Manchester United numbers, and the numbers would be the same for a German team because it's market pool plus money market pool is the money that different associations get, and then there's a prize money that is a fixed amount, right? Germany, England, Spain, and Italy are considered the big markets in Europe, so they get more, right? And Manchester United got 45 million euros from winning the Europa League last year, so they ended up with 45 million euros. A Europa League winner from Germany can approximately calculate with that kind of money. A team like Frankfurt will not reach the Europa League final next year, right? So they have to calculate in the region of maybe reaching the round of 16 at the best, at which stage you would earn about 6 million euros from the Europa League. if you get out of the Champions League group stage, you're already at 45 to 50 million euros, which is doable. And this is money that you can calculate with, right? This doesn't even include all the extra bonuses you get for every game you win. If you win a game in the Champions League, you get 1.5 million euros. Even for a draw, you get 500,000. That's 10 times the amount of money you get for a win or draw in the Europa League. So basically, the moment they finish in the top 4, they can calculate with 35 million euros extra. That's keeping Lukas Hradecky. That's keeping everyone on the side, and that's like 2 extra signings for them on top of the television money that they get from being in the Bundesliga and being in the top 4. Whereas when you're in the Europa League, you cannot calculate with that kind of money. You can you get a base calculation of an additional 3 million euros. Now that's not going to buy you very much. That's not even going to pay Lukas Hradecky's salary next year, and he will be gone, right? He will be one of many gone. So I think from a financial situation and getting Frankfurt to that next level, they will actually almost have to reach the Champions League. And in the numbers that I just told you, it doesn't even include sponsorship. It doesn't include ticket sales. And it doesn't include potential investors coming in because you're all of a sudden a Champions League side. So that's a huge change, right? They basically would turn from a team that has to recreate a squad every season into a team that not can only keep players together, but can make another jump. And given the market size of Frankfurt as a city, that could actually create, we spoke about this last season, right, Chris, about teams from the big cities in Germany that could potentially one day challenge Bayern. And we targeted Hamburg. Well, that's kind of gone. We targeted Köln. Well, they were in the Europa League and they did lose key players. And we talked about Berlin, and well, Berlin are Berlin. So this is really the team that has that opportunity to break into that echelon.
Yeah, very interesting the way you broke that down, actually. Yeah, well, hopefully they can see it out, get into the Champions League, and I think it's going to be a good thing for the city of Frankfurt as well. But Chris, can we just have a little second to speak about Mainz? Things aren't quite looking as favourable for them. They've only picked up 6 points out of a possible 30 in this calendar year. Manu even said that that they're possibly one of the teams that's, well, maybe even favourites to land that third from bottom place. What's your views? What exactly has gone wrong for them this season?
Oh, well, I think they've just been found out. I think they were a little lucky that they weren't a lot lower than they were last season. They play, is it rude to say they play boring football? Because they are horrendously boring at times. Their football is unimaginative. It's very rudimentary. It's easy for teams to pick apart. If you look at recently, Hoffenheim tore them apart 4-2. They're drawing or losing points to teams around them. For instance, everyone's been battering Hamburg. They couldn't even do that. They've been beaten by Schalke and Bayern. Okay, I get that. They are good sides, but I mean, it's telling. The only game they've won in recent times is against Hertha Berlin, and they're another team who are equally as boring at times. So I think it's a fair reflection of them, and that it's very sour for them at the moment. I look around when I see them, and they're playing in front of a third empty stadium. It must be disappointing for them, and it must be hard for them to get themselves out of this rut they're in. And I think back-to-back defeats here is going to put them into a real slog, because look at the games they've currently. They've got Gladbach. You would fancy Gladbach to beat them. And then you've got them playing Cologne, and you couldn't find 2 different teams at the moment on different trajectories and different ways of approaching the game. So if they fail to pick up nothing out of those 6 points on offer, then they could be in a lot of trouble. And then, of course, their run-in is probably one of the hardest, I think, there is for the teams down there. Their last 3 games are against Leipzig, Dortmund, and Werder Bremen, who've been playing very, very well recently. So I think, unless they have a monumental turnaround in the next 2 match days, I think we could be looking at a team that are going to be in a relegation playoff later on this season.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
And Manu, if we just stick to the relegation area of the league at the moment, Cologne won this weekend. They managed to beat Bayer Leverkusen 2-0. Do you see them in the coming weeks maybe passing the likes of Mainz, or maybe even catching up with the likes of Wolfsburg?
Well, how things change from one match day to another, right? They looked so dead and buried last week. And then this week, everything went in their favor. Absolutely everything. They won their game and looked very good, by the way, today against Leverkusen, a side that I thought had a very good season and still having a good season. And Wolfsburg lost, Mainz lost, Hamburg lost, and all of a sudden it's just 5 points with 7 games to play. That's nothing when you look at trajectories. That's absolutely nothing, because Mainz and Wolfsburg lose the next match day and Köln win, then that 5 points becomes 2. And Köln still has Mainz and Wolfsburg. And the final match of the season is actually Wolfsburg against Köln. I think it's a possibility. I mean, we all said they were dead and buried last week, and then they came out with this performance today that was just unbelievable. Such a great match by them. Pick up 3 big points in the derby. It could happen. Yeah. It really could.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we probably looked at it last week and thought them picking up anything against the likes of Leverkusen, who have had a good season, is slim to none. But they really burst out of the traps this week, didn't they? Yes, there was sending off to Laria, which after the referee looking at the video assistance, decided to send him on his way. Which certainly would have influenced the results. Don't get me wrong, but they looked game for it today. And the passing was good. They do look like one of the sides actually down in that part of the table that are playing a bit of football, if you know what I mean. So things are looking positive, and especially when we all know like the fans, it's such a big part of Cologne home games as well, and it could be very influential. And that final match day is perfectly placed, really, isn't it? I hope at that stage there's still a lot for them to play for, because it'll just make it even more entertaining, won't it?
But Bryce, 2 match days from now, so match day 29, they have Mainz at home.
Yeah, exactly. And as Chris said, if you base them on form at the moment, you would have to say that's set up for Cologne to pick up 3 points, isn't it? And not to use a pun, but people would say that's a 6-pointer, isn't it? It's got very interesting, and I think what we've also should decide is not to call this one just yet, because we keep saying, don't we, at different points that they're gone now, but they keep giving us a bit of hope. And I think there's a lot of games and a lot of twists and turns to come. And
what they've got to do, guys, is they've got to put some sort of form together. If you look at last time, and they beat Hamburg 2-0, and then they drew to Augsburg and lost back-to-back games against Dortmund and Frankfurt. And then, they pulled off an unbelievable victory against Leipzig, but then were beaten by Stuttgart and Werder Bremen back-to-back, and now they've just beaten Leverkusen. So it's going to be important for them to pull out some sort of result. If they can get a draw against Hoffenheim and then beat Mainz, then that could propel them on look at the games they got after that. They got Hertha. That's winnable for them. Schalke, maybe not so. Then they've got Freiburg, which you could think they could win, given on Freiburg's form. Then they've got to play Bayern, who, of course, will have won the championship by then. That's the Saturday, the 5th of May. So they'll probably still be drunk. So they have got a good chance of beating Bayern at home, because Bayern will be concentrating, we hope, on a Champions League final that will be coming up not long after that. And then, as Manu says, they've got that last game against Wolfsburg. So for the teams down the bottom, easier running is probably a a hard thing to say or not a very factual thing to say, but it's more, definitely have a more winnable run-in than any of the others around them.
Chris, just you're obviously looking at the fixtures at the moment. How many points do you see them getting out of those?
Well, if they're going to be on top form, they can definitely draw against Hoffenheim, so that's 1. They can beat Mainz. 4, Hertha, maybe 7. I'd say they take a loss against Schalke, maybe draw with Freiburg. I can quite easily see them take 11 or 12 points out of that run-in, which would definitely be enough to pull them clear.
Yeah, 32 points could be enough this year. 32, 34 points. And then of course, that final match against Wolfsburg, right?
Yeah, that's it. I think they're going to have to pick up their form a little bit, as Chris said, a bit more consistency when it comes to that. But I suppose it also comes down to if Mainz can pull themselves out of this rut and Wolfsburg, 2 teams that look a bit down and out at the moment. But guys, let's jump back up the table. We kind of unexpectedly just jumped into the relegation battle, but let's talk about the other European sides, European hopefuls, what we say. We've got Schalke and rivals Dortmund sitting in 2nd and 3rd. Schalke very much a team in good form as well. Chris, can you see both these teams, well, more or less getting into the Champions League now, with their positions? They may not be that much further ahead than Frankfurt, but it would be hard to see them slip up and fall out of that, right?
I think it would be disappointing to see either of them slip up and fall out of that. As someone who goes and watches Borussia Dortmund a lot and has got some good ties to Borussia Dortmund, it pains me to say that I think this season Schalke will finish above them. I think Tedesco's done a fantastic job there, and they've got some excellent players, and they're playing a brand of football which is exciting to watch. And I think we can all see by the reaction from the Schalke bench that even though they just about scraped past what is a poor Wolfsburg, it meant a lot to them because they know they're going to be chased the whole way by their neighbours. But I would be exceptionally surprised if either of them fell out of the top 4, and I think it would be unfair, reflective on their season. Dortmund look to be a little more solid under Peter Stoger now. Today's result was a good result, although they're still not converting enough goals. And as we spoke before the pod, if they defend the way they did against Bayern, at times like they did against Hanover, I mean, they give Hanover 3 real good opportunities to score, and Hanover couldn't take any of them. Well, I don't think Bayern Munich failed to take one of them. They probably take 2 out of those 3. So it's going to be difficult for them. But I think on the season whole, if Schalke were to finish 2nd, I think that would be really reflective of the way they've performed this season under Domenico Tedesco.
Yeah, absolutely. They've had a fantastic season as well. It seems like we're really singing the praises of several clubs this year, but it is true. There's been quite a few that are much improved on last year. I suppose, Manu, would you agree with Chris that Schalke look good for 2nd place at the moment? I mean, if we look at the next match day, Schalke are going to be at home to Freiburg, where Dortmund, we know, will be playing Bayern Munich. Then after that, you've got Dortmund playing Stuttgart, which is going to be tough. We talked about their fine form, where we've got Schalke playing Hamburg, which they'll be rubbing their hands together, thinking they should be able to get 6 points in those 2 games, surely.
Yeah, and it's the only question mark that I have about Schalke, Bryce, is all those results are very tight. They have that match luck a little bit, that is just scraping by results, and they weren't that convincing against Wolfsburg to me. And that's a game that can also maybe go the other way. And there's been a lot of games like that. So for me personally, they lack that quality a little bit, and I can see those results go the other way very easily. And you look at the difference in goal differential. Dortmund has a goal differential that's more reflective of a side that should probably be 2nd in chasing Bayern, and Schalke have a goal differential that's more reflective of a fourth or maybe 5th place team. And I think the real reason why Schalke are where they are is because Dortmund didn't win a game from October to November. Right? This is something that we have to remember. And I think Could Schalke finish ahead of Dortmund? Yeah, absolutely, because the next 2 match days, Chris outlined them very well. Dortmund could drop behind, but I mean, I could also see Dortmund win those 2 games. And Schalke maybe drawing one of them, and then the table is flipped. So it's, yeah, I'm of all the teams, funnily enough, of all the teams, even though Schalke had a good season, I'm just not convinced. I'm just not 100% convinced by this side.
I think for me, my reasoning behind it is Schalke, as Bryce said, will play Freiburg and Hamburg back to back before the Rivera derby, whereas Dortmund have got Bayern and Stuttgart, which I think is a little more of a test for them. So it's going to be very, very well poised for that game in the Veltins, which I think is going to be a cracker. You would expect Schalke to attack at home, and Dortmund have been a little bit suspect on times. But what they did show today, and they have done for the last couple of games, disregard the European games, but the last couple of Bundesliga games, is they've been able to get that counter-attack back. So it could all be set up for an exceptionally end-to-end game on the 15th of April. So I'll be looking forward to that. But for me, it's how the running into that game goes. And then we're 3 matches away, and it's almost like a shootout then, isn't it, to see which team in that area finishes top.
I think that maybe the big difference between Bayern and Dortmund, to precurse the Klassiker a little bit, is that unlike Bayern, Dortmund didn't send any players to the German national team. And that's basically means that, yes, there's other players that go to their respective national teams, right? But that's 2 weeks off for some key players ahead of the Klassiker. Curious to see how that's going to affect things. And I think if Dortmund win that game against Bayern, then I'm 100% sure that Dortmund will finish second. But you're absolutely right, Chris. I mean, Dortmund definitely have the far more difficult program going into the Revier Derby.
May I just ask, fellas, how do you see that game going just before we talk about Dortmund in Europe? I suppose we're going to have to touch on that. But how do you see the Klassiker going? Chris, do you see Dortmund being able to get 3 points out of that game? It's a big ask.
Well, I think it's all on Bayern Munich, this one, Bryce, because if they give me the accreditation that I've applied for, then Dortmund will win, because I've never seen Dortmund get beat in the Allianz Arena. So it's all on Bayern, I think. It's up to them. The future's in their hands.
We may want to have to cut this one out, guys, just in case Chris doesn't get any accreditation. We're going to preview this one extensively, I guess, next week anyways, right? So maybe once we know how the national team games went and look at injuries and squad depth and etc., that's going to be something that we're going to look very much in depth into next week anyways.
Yeah, I think we can hold out till then and talk about it. But as I said, we're going to talk about Dortmund a little bit further, aren't we? Things didn't go too well in the Europa League. We've seen them drop out to RB Salzburg. If I'm being honest, Chris, I watched the game and it was really poor. Dortmund just didn't seem to turn up at all. They then went out after a 0-0 away draw. Went out on aggregate 2-1. This was a poor showing from Dortmund, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I think I referred to it twice as an embarrassment in both match reports. And embarrassment, not just because if you look at the politics, Borussia Dortmund are vehemently opposed to anything to do with the sort of corporate, and I'll use their words for this, monstrosity that Red Bull football is. So for them to get beat by an Austrian side is one embarrassment, but then to fall against something they are so positively against, I think would have been another embarrassment, or definitely would have been salt into the wounds for them. But yeah, you're quite right. They were poor in the home game. They shouldn't have been beaten in the home game, and then we all thought there would be a response, and there wasn't. And the performance Salzburg midweek was probably one of the worst Dortmund performances I've seen for a long time. Most definitely this season, but then probably a couple of seasons beyond that, they were really, really poor. So this game this weekend against Hanover, Peter Stoger needed a response He needed a response from the players, and he needed a response from himself and his staff. And I thought this was a good game. I mean, it went off to a flyer. Michy Batshuayi hitting the post after 45 seconds, slightly unlucky. His shot took a little deflection underneath Schausener's body on the way through. It just took it onto the post, and I think you're getting some bad luck when if you hit the post, it doesn't rebound into the back of the net. But then Dortmund just powered past Hanover, but couldn't get that second goal, which, if we've talked about the fixtures coming up, is a worry for them. That's one of my worries for them. But the way they started, I thought they were very frightening. In fact, I referred to Hanover as being caught in the sun and frozen to the pitch, because they just didn't have anything about them. And it wasn't until really the 40th minute that they tested them. But on the whole, I thought Dortmund were good for their win, hit the post late on, clipped the bar with one shot as well. So on the balance of play, Dortmund deserved it. But I will hark back to what I said earlier, which is if you give Bayern Munich any sort of opportunity like they gave Hanover on this particular match day, they'll be punished, or you would expect them to be punished. Obviously, Bayern will be going into that game off the defeat at Leipzig. But for me, what I was particularly pleased with, and Manu, you'll have seen this game as well, was for the first time this season, we saw something of Dahoud, which I thought was excellent.
Yeah, no, I mean, Dahoud is, for me, people ask me a lot of time about Dahoud, and I think that I always point at İlkay Gündoğan, and we all remember, of course, how brilliant of a player İlkay Gündoğan was, but a lot of people don't remember that it took quite some time for him to adapt to Dortmund, right, at life at Dortmund. And so I'm of the category people say Mahmoud Dahoud is a fantastic player, and he will remain a fantastic player, and he will strive at this club. Just, he needs a bit of time, and Stöger is playing him, even after, games where he didn't look great. Stöger still is playing him. So he has the confidence of the manager now, and I think that's really key for him to just develop and get his legs going and get playing time, right? And I mean, this is the most important thing for him now, and I think that we all know what a big of a talent he is, right, Chris?
Yeah, he's an exceptional talent, and I think maybe we were spoiled a little bit. Don't forget, he's a very young guy still developing, still learning the trade, and maybe we were spoilt with the sort of skill and the performances he put on when he was at Gladbach. And just because he's young and he's moved, maybe it will take a season or two, but Dortmund certainly have the time and the ability to develop that. And let's not forget, he's nowhere near his prime as a footballer yet. You're looking maybe 25, 26 when a player hits their prime. And he's obviously nowhere near that at the moment. So he has got time on his side to grow into this side. But once again, Dortmund's ability to spot potential talent in the form of Batshuayi, to bring him in which pretty much I think we're all going to say he was a bit of a Chelsea reject. He's now scored more goals in his start at Dortmund than Aubameyang did in his start in the same number of games. So we know what he went on to be. It's all, can they keep him in the summer? If he keeps playing like this, I can't see Chelsea will want to sell him, especially you would expect them to have a manager move on. And if I was going to come into Chelsea, the first thing I'd want would be Batshuayi back in a blue kit.
Yeah, most certainly. And that goal was something special, wasn't it? A fantastic bit of technique. Manu, if we look at the points that Dortmund have at this stage of the season compared to last, they're only 2 points behind. So if they were to beat Bayern, they would actually, because they played Bayern on match week 28 as well last season, if they were to beat them, as they lost to them last year 4-1, they would actually have more points this season than what they did last year. I know that's a lot of ifs and buts, but I suppose when you think about how poorly they were at one stage in the season, it's not actually that bad in comparison, is it? And a lot of people very critical of Stöger since he's come in, about the football maybe not being as scintillating as what they would like it to be, but it has been efficient, hasn't it? He's got results, and though it doesn't seem to stop the links with other coaches.
What did Chris call it this morning? Stöger ball.
Yes, I did indeed.
It's a tough question, Bryce, because we didn't really feel that Thomas Tuchel got the most out of the side last season either. His football at times was tantalizing, but that was also because of Ousmane Dembele. And the football was tantalizing at times in the beginning of the season this year too, and then it just completely fell flat. And I think Stöger is getting the maximum out of the side. That this what we see is what we're gonna get, and there will be changes coming. There's a lot of changes I think that they already worked on right now, and I think maybe this is just the maximum that you're gonna get out of this side. And yes, you're right. Victory against Bayern would mean Dortmund are actually ahead of what Thomas Tuchel fabricated last season. I think last season at this point, Thomas Tuchel was already very much in trouble with the dressing room, and people remember him for that first season at Dortmund and the amazing football that they played in Europe, but also in the Bundesliga, right, where they came so very close to dislodging Bayern from the top of the table. But they forget that, of course, the Dortmund bled players, 3 star players left, Gündogan and Mkhitaryan, and of course Hummels. And that's something that Dortmund really has been struggling with for a couple of years. And I think it may be a little bit of a cut is important, that they just rebuild with younger players that still want to win stuff. They can keep Batshuayi, that's great. I'm not 100% sure that he is the player that they do actually need. There's rumors about Lautaro Martinez that Dortmund have outbid Inter Milan to sign him, the Argentine wonder kid, so we'll keep an eye on that as well. We have a source in Argentina, and Inter Milan seem to have, even though Dortmund have outbid them, Inter Milan seem to have the upper hand because there's a pre-agreement. So interesting though that Dortmund are looking at other options, and I think that the magic is just a little bit gone right now for me. When we watched the side 2-3 years ago, there was a magic about it, and that's just gone. And I think maybe Stöger is the right man right now, and maybe he will be the right man next season too, if he gets the right player material. But maybe someone new will come in, someone like Lucien Favre, and there's also rumors about Ralf Hasenhüttl, who I think is an excellent coach. So yeah, I guess, I mean, Chris, we talked about this off air. It's really just, people forget that the side wasn't great last year either at times.
No, it wasn't. And we're talking about a side that had to win on the last game of the season to be in that Champions League automatic slot. If results would have gone the other way towards the end of the season, they could have quite possibly been in a Champions League playoff, which I think would have been a little embarrassing for them, especially as they went on to win the Pokal, and maybe that papered over some of the cracks from last season. But this season, yeah, you've just mentioned all the reasons why it's gone wrong, and it's interesting to see pre-match press conference by Zorc to say that, to paraphrase him, they would look again at the coaching situation in the summer because maybe it's not worked out as they thought it would do so far. So that's quite telling when you've got someone like Zorc saying that. But in the meantime, Stoker's getting the results that they need. If you look at the last time they were really beaten convincingly in the Bundesliga, you've got to go back a long way. And he's doing well. I think that's 16 games now across competitions where Peter Stoker's got a good result for Dortmund. So I think it bodes well going into the Klassiker after the international break. And if he can win that, the magnitude of that game and what it's thought of, not just by the players, but the fans and also by the board. And then if they put in a really good display against Schalke, you never know what might happen last season. But I don't really know. I think we might be in that Dortmund situation again where, with Thomas Tuchel, he went into a meeting and we didn't know whether he was going to be sacked or whether he was going to stay. I think we could be into that sort of same element at the end of the season where literally until they have a meeting, they don't know if they're going to carry on with Stöger or not.
Yeah, I suppose time will tell. We'll just have to see what happens. It's going to be hard to part ways with him, I would imagine, if he continues to keep them in fine form. But another team that's had a rather good week and a good day of results today was RB Leipzig. They managed to beat the champions Bayern Munich, which seems to be becoming a bit of a classic to us. We were there last year, weren't we, to see RB Leipzig at home to Bayern. Unfortunately, they lost on that occasion 5-4. Fantastic day for the three of us, all in the ground. But they managed to come out on top after being 1-0 down today to win 2-1. They also progressed through in the Europa League. So pretty good week, Manu, for RB Leipzig, eh?
Yeah, and I said after they went through against Zenit in the round of 16, in a heavy defeat to Bayern, because they have been so hot and cold when it comes to European weeks, and they didn't this time. They actually managed to take that performance, and I thought they were actually quite good in Russia, in a difficult place to play against a very good side, against a team that's very much fought for its last chance to any trophy this season. A coach, Roberto Mazzini, was very much on the ropes right now, right, and needed to win this game. And despite that penalty miss in the last minute by Timo Werner, got the result that they needed. And I thought, well, this is a game that will probably have taken a lot out of them, and I didn't see very much for them going into Bayern. And then they played very well today. At times had Bayern on the ropes. Maybe the caveat is that they should have maybe scored a second or third, because I felt that even 2-1 up, the Bayern were very dangerous at times and could have maybe scored that equalizer. And that's maybe something that I've noticed a little bit about Leipzig in the last few weeks, that they have kind of lacked killing off games. It happened against Zenit, it happened today against Bayern, that they just didn't manage to kill that game off early on. Because if they scored a third, maybe even a fourth, as Chris suggested on our chat, that could have definitely happened, then Bayern would not have come back today. Unlike last May when we were all there. So I thought it was very good, but there's something that they still need to work on. But I think they step in the right direction, and they're now back in that Champions League race, Bryce.
Yeah, most certainly. We've mentioned, haven't we, several times about how close it is at the top of the table there. And Chris, I suppose you would agree as well that, you know, this fixture seems to be becoming a bit of a classic, doesn't it? And they looked up for it today. And yeah, they're going to have to keep up this form, I suppose, if they're going to get into that top four. It's not going to be easy.
No, it's not for them. And, you know, both sides heavily rotated. I thought if you look at their Bayern midfield, it wasn't their strongest or the first one that would jump off the page. But then Hasenhüttl made some changes as well, left out Forsberg, left out Werner, but the lineup he went with, that 3-4-2-1, and he played Keïta in a more advanced role, which we've seen in more of a central role, as almost in a double pivot and a 4-4-2 that they played at times. But today they completely changed the tactics, and it came up trumps for them. I thought they were very hungry. It was almost like that midfield diamond. It's like a diamond 5, and I thought they were very, very good and very strong. And Bayern looked a little flat at times, and I don't think Rudy coped at all with Keïta and Sabitzer bearing down well on him, which is a little worry for Bayern maybe in the future, especially if they're going to not have the likes of Ribéry or Robben, or even, you know, Robert Lewandowski didn't start today. But on the plus side for Bayern, Sandro Wagner took his goal very well and was very pleased with himself. It was a beautiful header, downward header. I think it's the only place he could have putting the ball to beat Galassi in the goal. But back to Leipzig, and Manu said it, and you know, we chatted it off air. They should have really put 3 or 4 past Bayern and made a big statement. Poulsen had a good chance. Werner had another very good chance. I think Sabitzer or Lammer had a very good chance as well to put the game out of reach. And it had that little feeling towards the back end of the game that Bayern would just come up and do what Bayern do very well, which is steal a very, very late consolation or maybe even winning goal if they could have got a couple. We saw that last weekend, or the weekend before previously, where Bayern can just steam back into a match that what they have in depth. But for Leipzig, and Manu mentioned it, they've been dreadful on the whole when they come back from Europe. But this was a really, really good victory for them in what was a full Red Bull Arena. And I think it's probably the best game I've seen Leipzig play this season. Certainly the best I've seen from their midfield 5.
Yeah, I think so. I think they looked very positive, didn't they? Looked very lively. Bayern tried to move up the pitch, then it created a bit more space, and we know that RB Leipzig like a bit of space when it comes to attacking. They like to be able to run into those channels, and yeah, very exciting and a fantastic victory for them. Manu, if we look at the Europa League, the draw has been done, and it's seen RB Leipzig taking on Olympique Marseille. What do you think of their chances of progressing beyond this stage? Is the Champions League via winning the Europa League a possibility for them?
Look, they took out Napoli, they took out Zenit. I think those are two teams that are on the level, maybe even above Marseille. And I think, yeah, I mean, the big one for Leipzig will be to avoid Atletico Madrid in the semi-final if they get there, right? And then it's once you're in the final, everything is possible. This is a good side. RB Leipzig are a good side, and if they take out Olympique Marseille, I think they can win this competition, or among the teams that could win the competition. So yeah, why not, Bryce? But yeah, Olympique Marseille, especially in Marseille, that will be a tough game. We have a Marseille expert on the Football Ground Network, and Thomas Farines, who will probably bring on before this match to chat to us a bit about Olympique, and the strength and weaknesses of this side. And, you know, the Velodrome in Marseille is a very difficult place to play, but they've done it in Napoli, they've done it in Russia, in St. Petersburg. So those are already two big clubs that they've taken out in this competition, and I can't see why Marseille should be now the Stolperstein for them.
Yes, indeed. Why can't they go all the way to the final? Atletico, I agree, will be the only bigger and more challenging side for them in the competition in my eyes. But Chris, let's talk a little bit about Bayern. Obviously, they're going to be champions, it looks like, in the coming few weeks, unless there was a hell of a shock. But they looked a little bit tired today, didn't they? They did have a few chances, but just weren't firing on all cylinders like they normally are. I mean, is the national team or the international break coming up this week, is it perfect timing for them?
Not really, because most of their players will go and play for their respective countries. So, no, I don't think it is. I think they could probably do with pulling a few players out with injuries, in inverted commas. I mean, look who they've got. Look who they didn't start today. Boateng didn't start. Rafinha came on late. Martinez, who I thought has played very, very well this season, didn't start. Lewandowski didn't start, and Ribery didn't start. I don't know if I mentioned him twice, but you know, Muller played on the right. I do like Thomas Muller a lot, but I'm not sure if I like him on the right compared to when I like him as a second striker. And I don't know, the back four didn't look particularly good, and I think the removal of Kimmich isn't a good sign for them either. But on the whole, maybe a little break might do them well to get away from the Bayern environment and go and hang around in the various national team environments and come back in, you know, was it 10 days or so, and reattack the game. And I personally thought that Bayern would have been up for this, because victory here would almost certainly have given them the chance to win the league title at home against Dortmund in 2 weeks' time. And I don't think you need any sort of more impetus to do that than have a fixture like that where you can win the title. You can do it in what's been your historically the last few seasons, your main rivals. You can rub their noses in it while they're not doing particularly good. And let's not forget the gap that Bayern had to Dortmund at the start of the season, and everybody, me included, thought that it would be Dortmund's season. So for Bayern to be able to do that, I think would have been something very special for them. But they've rotated. Jupp Heynckes has rotated. I don't think it's worked, but then it's the first time they've lost since November. It's the first time they've lost in the Bundesliga under Jupp Heynckes. So, you know, things happen, and I'm sure he'll rectify it, but I don't think it's season defining for them. I don't think it will. I don't think it makes the games coming up against Sevilla look any less. I think Bayern will have more than enough to power past them, especially at the Allianz. I think that game could be done and dusted at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of the time when it comes to the competition, whether it being home and away legs, having your home one as second of all is of massive benefit. But I think even if it had been the other way around, I think Bayern have too much for Sevilla and will progress to the next round. We did mention that it is an international break coming up. So Manu, I feel that we're going to have to speak a little bit about the German side, because on Friday they're going to be taking on Spain, and then on Tuesday taking on Brazil. Games. How do you view both games? How seriously will they be taken? And were there any surprise inclusions or exclusions in the squad?
Yeah, I think the one that everyone is talking about is that Marco Reus and Mario Götze are not on the side. Mario Götze, of course, simply not good enough in recent weeks. He was very heavily criticized by the management in Dortmund too. I did think he had a better game today. Marco Reus, people expected him to be back, but I think it's actually the right decision to not bring him back now for needless friendly games. Why risk it, right? I think 2 weeks in Dortmund training on his own, working on his body will do him better. He's been playing a lot of games for someone who came back recently from ACL injury, and he sat out today because he had some muscle problems, which is normal after a heavy injury like that. So I think the 2 weeks off will actually do him very good. Other than that, this is two tantalizing fixtures, and we have the squad in general is a very good squad that Joachim Löw put together. Another player is that you people also know from the English Premier League, of course, Leroy Sané is in the squad, Emil Can, Ilkay Gündogan, Antonio Rüdiger. This is going to be fun. I personally love when friendly. I do like national team games, period. I guess I'm a bit spoiled as a German, but I especially like them when they play against big sides like Spain and Brazil. And I'm very curious about the Brazil fixture in particular, because I think this is, of course, a matchup that could very well happen next summer in Russia as well.
Yes, indeed. And Chris, I mean, there's plenty of people who will complain about, international breaks, that they get fed up with them. They'd rather see their club teams play. But, I mean, as far as fixtures go, this is two pretty decent fixtures, aren't they? I mean, two interesting and exciting ones.
Yeah, they are. They're both previous world champions, as in Spain and Brazil, and obviously they're playing the current world champions. And we all know the strength and depth that Germany have got. I'm just a little surprised on the goalkeeper selection. I maybe would have taken Farman from Schalke. I thought he's had a very, very good season, and then I don't think has had the best of season. So I was quite surprised to see him in there. But I'm pretty sure I could have a go at naming the starting 11 for the World Cup. So Joachim Löw will know exactly who his best 11 are. So he's probably just having a little bit of a look around. But, I mean, you look at this squad and there is strength in depth everywhere. So the goalkeepers are very good, and that's without Neuer being in there. The defence, I mean, look at those defenders. You've got Plattenhardt, who I think is a very, very good defender. Hector, Ginter, Boateng, Rudiger, Hummels, Sula, Kimmich. I mean, wow, if you're any other nation, you'd like to have maybe two of those defenders, not all of them. And then the midfield and attack that they've picked from. I mean, Ozil's having a fantastic season over at Arsenal. You mentioned Sebastian Rudy. Maybe didn't have the best game for Bayern, just gone in this match day, but don't detract that from his season on the whole. Emre Can's played well for Liverpool. Sané's played well for City, as Manu said. And then we've got Goretzka, who plays exceptionally well. Mario Gomez, the old-timer, still in there, and he's still banging the goals away for Stuttgart. So I think these could be two very, very good games that we see. The only concern I have is that some of these players don't pick up injuries. That then means they can't play part as the season running, and I think that would be a shame. So I'm hoping to see two entertaining games, Bryce, without any injuries being picked up for anyone.
Yes, here's hoping. Nobody wants to see injuries, do they? Especially, in the build-up to the end of the season and the World Cup. But, guys, that more or less does it for this week. We've managed to cover a lot of ground, as always. I have no doubt that both you fellas will have plenty of articles and whatnot coming up on Football Grad. Chris, how about you go first? What would you like to draw people's attention to, or where can they find you on Twitter?
Well, we'll have various things coming out, so just keep your eyes peeled, and you can find me at Chris78Williams on Twitter, or all my stuff will be pushed out via @FootballGradLive.
Yes, indeed. And that leaves us with you, Manu. What have you got coming our way?
Yeah, it's an international break. So I think we're previewing the 2 Germany games. We're previewing to Russia games. They actually have 2 interesting fixtures as well. They're playing Brazil too. And we're previewing the 2 Ukraine games. Mark Temnitsky is on that. And then I think there will be a bunch of other things coming your way next week. The usual podcasts. We're previewing, of course, the L3 fixtures, right, Bryce, on Golazzo. So yeah, plenty of stuff coming your way at Football Grad Live. And then, of course, you can follow me at Manuel Veth. I do the usual stuff, Bundesliga, football from the post-Soviet space, and then of course I'm the Pro Soccer USA Vancouver Whitecaps correspondent as well.
Yeah, indeed. You fellas are always kept busy, aren't you, with the fixtures throughout the year. Thank you very much for tuning in. As always, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please head over to the likes of iTunes or wherever else and leave us some positive feedback. We greatly appreciate that. Also, get in touch online, either at Football Grad Live or any of our own Twitter handles, mine being at Bryce Dunn 11. Well, that more or less does it for this week. We'll be back rather soon to talk about the international games and to preview Der Klassiker coming up. Until then, auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's sein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, dich abzuholen.
Let's be real, dealing with tangled cords can make it harder to do your hair. Break free with the new Unbound Cordless Auto Curler from Conair. Get the curls and waves you want, anytime, anywhere. It's designed to let you experience the power and freedom of beauty in motion. No cords to hold you back. You get your curls and waves your way. Unplug and be unbound. Loose curls, tight curls, beachy waves. The Unbound Cordless Auto Curler makes it easy to get the looks you love. Love your look. Live unbound. Available at Conair.com and search Unbound.
What's up, folks? Anthony Armstrong here, former NFL receiver and host of Believe in Commanders. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. It's a league specifically created for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. Make your way over to prizepicks.com/believe and use the code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a first deposit match up to $100. You must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.